let's get into some more fun conversation.
Yes, it is time. John, it is officially, let's finish out the pod with something that I have been waiting to do. Let's talk Mariners. Let's talk baseball. Because the Mariners this week, I believe it was on Tuesday maybe, the MLB did their draft lottery. And the Mariners, at a 0.5% chance for this to happen, they ended up with the third pick in the first round. They have the third pick in the 2025 MLB Draft. That is so exciting. This Mariners organization is an organization that has shown that they know how to draft well. I think they have 4 or 5 prospects in the top 100 right now. They know how to build them. We've seen this with their pitching development. Like our starting staff, our starting rotation is full of arms that we have developed from late draft picks. Imagine what we could do. We took two arms last year, so I'm not thinking that they're looking to take arms necessarily this year, early on at least. But we've been able to do that so well with the pitching, and I'm really hoping that they can get an offensive piece with this third pick in the draft. Do you have any thoughts about this before I dive into a little more detail?
Massive, so exciting, absolute fleece. This is why I love like draft lottery things like this, where it's not just strictly based on record, because every once in a while you get kind of a game-breaking situation like this for a team as good as this Mariners team is. To get the number 3 pick in the draft is awesome. This is a very talented draft. People are in agreement. It's not, not mind-melting or anything. It's not going to give them the rights to a Shohei Ohtani necessarily, but it's still a very talented class. To get put up into that top 3 is incredibly exciting. I think the most interesting aspect of it for me, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, is there are 2 guys in this draft that I really, really like. And it looks like they might go 1 and 2. And after those 2 guys, it's looking like a lot of arms. It's like, man, I don't want an arm. I'm with you. I want a bat. And it looks like there are 2 bats. And if we can get either one of them, I would be very excited.
Yeah, so I think the first thing to do when we look at this setup is let's take a look at let's talk about where the Mariners are with relation to their competing window and where this player that they draft will fall into, whether it's this competing window or the next competing window or the one after that. Like if they're, I doubt this is going to happen, but if they get Ethan Holiday, this guy's 17, he's not going to be major league ready for another 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 years. Like if he doesn't perform well in the minors, like this guy's young. Some of these guys are very young, 18-year-olds coming in. And they will take some time. And some of them are 3rd, 4th years in college and are, a year or 2 away from being ready to be at the MLB level. There's no real like Paul Skeens level arm where it's just like, oh, this guy, we picked him up, first pick in the draft, and then he's ready to go right in the middle of the season. Like that's not going to happen. That's a very rare one-off case. So where these guys are, I guess, is a question of like, do we think that in terms of, let's talk about this guy, Jace Laviolette, they're ranked number 2 in the MLB pipeline. He's an outfielder out of Texas A&M, 21 years old, pretty ready. He's been at Texas A&M for 3 years. He was a highly touted high school prospect and is now kind of coming around. But if we were to take him, for example, he would be with this class of like the Harry Fords, he might be even a little bit older than Colt Emerson, but like the Cole Youngs, like that class of player where he's a year or 2 away. Those guys are right on the cusp of being at the major league level. And that feels like where he would be. Or you go the other way and you take a much younger player. I think those are kind of the 2 options. Where do you want the Mariners to go with that?
It's tough to say. To be honest, I'm not going to hazard a guess because I'm just not really informed. I'm looking at a lot of these guys for the first time. I guess where do you see more of a need,
Yeah, I think if you're talking about where we see a need, the Mariners need some younger guys. Like they have this cream of the crop is, I guess, Colt Emerson. I think he's a younger guy. They picked him up out of high school. Like he's a guy that is very talented, but probably 3 or 4 years away. 2, maybe 3. I think 3 is a good number. And I think if we were to take, a guy like looking at Kason Cunningham, a high schooler out of Texas, he's a 18-year-old shortstop, but he's a little smaller. He just like projects as a little bit more of a consistent player, but he would be in that Colt Emerson class. And that is a position or an area of need when it comes to timeline.
Sure.
But if I was to pick up somebody, I think that this next window, like the Mariners are set to make trades and compete right now, but this next window of players is so good that if they were able to get a guy like Jace Laviolette or anybody who's like a young 20, we can maybe talk about Luis Castillo trades because that is something that's going around a lot right now too. But if they were to get a 20-year-old, some of these pitchers that you're talking about that are highly touted in terms of the prospect rankings, if they were to get one of those, they could bring them up and have them ready in a couple years and get them to the level of like a Bryce Miller, Brian Wu, and they would still be able to be in that rotation, in this rotation for years going forward. So I think that in terms of need, we would go younger, but in terms of what I desire, I would love to pick up a guy that's like right in that end of college, ready to go in a year or two.
That's great. That makes a lot of sense to me. I don't pay close enough attention to the farm system to know, how's our class looking here in a couple of years? It's always interesting how the draft, feeds the farm, which feeds the team. And everyone pays attention to the draft, but people don't necessarily pay as close attention as they should to the farm. But okay, so I'm going to give you a couple different situations here, and I want you to give me some answers. The first is, Ethan Holiday, Jace LaViolette, currently the top two prospects in the class. Say both of them fall. Say top two teams, Nationals and Angels, are going for pitchers. Between those two guys, who would you rather have on this team? Not based on timeline, just based on who you think is going to be a better pro.
Based between Ethan Holiday or Jace LaViolette, or the next two, the Jamie Arnold or Tyler Brenner?
No, those two.
You just said those two. Give me 1 and 2 or 3 and 4.
Ethan and Jace.
All right, between those two, I think what fits this team is probably the Jace LaViolette area, because he's like, we've got Randy Arozarena for 2 years. We've got, or maybe it's a year. It might be just this. No, it's 2 years.
It's 2.
I'm forgetting. It's 2 years through 2026. And we've got Victor Robles for another 2 years after his extension through 2026 as well. So this outfield is set up well to give Jace LaViolette time in the minors to basically be, he comes up quickly and can be that like maybe fourth outfielder in 2026, or a guy who can get his cup of coffee, and then in 2027 he's ready to go. In 2027 he's 23, 24, and he's good to play. I think that would be the perfect pick. I think Ethan Holiday he's a great guy, and if he's still sitting on the board at the third pick, that probably means LaViolette's gone and one of the pitchers is gone. You should take Ethan Holiday. Like Ethan Holiday is potentially better than his brother, who just got Jackson Holiday just got a cup of coffee at the major league level for the Orioles, and who is expected to be one of the better players in baseball in a half decade.
He was Ethan the number one pick by the Orioles, right?
Yeah. And Ethan Holiday is going to be a great baseball player at the major league level.
I love that family shit, man. That stuff gets me going.
It's crazy.
If your brother was a number 1 overall pick and you're a top 3 prospect, like that is a lock of a lock.
That is generational wealth right there, if I ever seen it too. Jesus Christ, that Holiday family.
Those arms are generational wealth, I'll tell you what.
So yeah, I think if either of those guys are available at that number 3 spot, you're taking them no matter what. I think if an arm goes,
you'd prefer Jace.
But I would prefer Jace purely based on where this Mariners team is with its farm system constructed the way that it is.
Yeah, 50 home runs in the last 2 years. That's always nice. This team's always hoping for a little bit of power, so that's a good.
Additionally, a lefty bat coming out of right field, like this team hasn't had a really like strong lefty power bat since and I wouldn't even call him a power bat, but like Kyle Seager is kind of the guy who dominated that right field box for the last like decade. And so to have somebody who's left-handed with a quick swing, can get the ball out to right field, like that is the area of power in that ballpark. We need a good lefty power hitter. This is the guy. This is the guy that could make that happen.
See, that's the shit I like. Now you're getting me fired up. Okay. Say both of them get taken in the top 2, which is, fairly likely. I don't want to talk about arms. We're skipping past the arms. Who is your sleeper sitting below these arms? Some of the guys I'm seeing are Kason Cunningham at Texas, Xavier Nayans at Mount Vernon, Eli Wiltis at shortstop for Fort Cobb Broxton. A couple of these next guys. Does anybody jump out to you as, we have the number 3 pick, but, there's nothing wrong with taking the number 8 prospect with the number 3 pick. Baseball is notoriously finicky, so it's not as cookie cutter as you see in a lot of professional sports. Who would you be comfortable reaching down for to skip past these arms and get a bat?
So a quick note on the arms. I know you don't want to talk about it. A quick note needs to be said.
You can feed us.
At the time of this draft, we will know a lot about how the arms are going to shake out for the future, how they're shaking out right now. It's like the draft happens, I think, during the season, if I'm not mistaken, or right at the in April. I don't remember exactly what day it is. But at that time, we'll know a lot about whether we've traded Luis Castillo, if we're going to need a fifth arm, because Luis Castillo's got a deal for 2 more years. We'll know if we'll need an arm sooner rather than later, if we're going to need to piecemeal it together with a fifth starter for a couple years. And in that case, maybe the Mariners will feel like they need to draft an arm to boost their rotation like they have done. In that case, I see Tyler Bremner is a guy who reminds me a lot of just like the profile of right-handed pitcher that they've been able to be successful with, like the Bryce Miller type. So I see him as the guy that the Mariners would probably love to get. In terms of a guy that you have the 3rd pick, you want to take a swing on somebody. Where do we want to go with that? Kason Cunningham's a tough one. I think he's more of a hit tool guy. He's kind of a J.P. Crawford-esque player. He's got a 60 grade hit, 45 grade power. Obviously, he's fine defensively. He's going to be a shortstop for a while. He's young, athletic, small enough to play shortstop and get things done. If you get too big, you just got to move to third, just as a side note for you baseball heads. So Kason Cunningham is a guy who reminds me a lot of J.P. Crawford. I don't know that he's a 3rd pick talent is sure. My concern there. I'm looking for a guy who's got a little bit more power, and I'm looking for kind of a lefty power bat. And when I look at that, I see Xavier Nayans coming out of high school in Mount Vernon, Washington. He's a guy who's currently committed to Oregon State. Hit tool 50, currently scouts graded. Hit tool 50, power 65. He's got a 45 run, 60 arm, fielding 50, and an overall grade of 55. He's just kind of the guy that we see. He's like a high school hitter, bats lefty, throws right, third baseman. Like he's the kind of guy that the Mariners could build around for the future, for that like second level of farm class with the Colt Emersons of this class or of this farm system. And I see him being like a guy. If you were going to drop down to, that would be my guy. Oops, sorry.
Okay, let's fucking go. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. He was the guy that I had identified. I was looking down. It's like, okay, if we don't get these top 2, who would I want? So 1, Mount Vernon, check. 2, committed to Oregon State. Seattle guy, yep. Check. 3, 6'4" and throws a 94-mile-an-hour pitch. Let's go. Obviously, probably won't pitch at any other level. More of a power hitting guy, but Xavier Nayans is the guy that caught my eye. I didn't even realize he was a lefty. Yeah. That's a big old green flag. So that's very exciting. Obviously, especially this Mariners team who's done a great job developing talent, they will not draft just to, reach down and get somebody. They don't care that I don't necessarily want them to get another arm. So decent chance we get, Seth Hernandez or Tyler Bremer or one of them. But if we get past Ethan Holiday and Jace LaViolette, I would be putting a big old glass on Xavier Nayans because especially, here in Seattle, you need big and you need strong, and he is obviously very big and very strong.
Yeah, and so reading into the ballpark a little bit, like the wind comes from left field. Like that's just kind of what the opening in the stadium allows wind to come in. You need to be able to hit it. If you're going to be a right-handed hitter, you got to have pure like 65 grade power to hit that ball out, like a Randy Arozarena. Even Julio like struggles. Like we saw Eugenio a lot of times, like they would push the ball to right field to try and hit home runs, and they would struggle hitting it to center, or hitting home run to center. And so like I just love a strong, powerful lefty swing, and we haven't really seen that. I love like Robbie Cano was a great lefty hitter for the Mariners. Obviously Griffey like back in the day, but that was like recently. You think of Kyle Seager, like that was the guy, and he wasn't even that big, but he was able to produce power through that big old booty of his. And and they were able to get things going. So Cal Raleigh is, I guess, right now the lefty power hitter that this team has. Yeah. But to get another one in the outfield, no less, would be great for this team.
Very great. We are not allowed to talk about Xavier Nayans' potential booty and its ability to push the ball out of the park. He's still in high school. That is out of bounds. We live in the state. He's still in the state. It's best to
not talk too much about this man's booty.
Well, maybe once he's out at Oregon State, we can make it down to Corvallis and come back with a scouting report.
At that point, we would hope that he doesn't go to Corvallis. He's currently a senior in high school. Yeah, we would hope that he just doesn't make it out there, and we'd take him and put him in Arizona fall leagues or something. But
okay, is that how that would work? See, I'm learning a lot here. I guess I figured he would still go play a year or two at Oregon State, but be under control of the Mariners. They'd pull him out of that.
What happens is, they would pull him out if it's a high schooler coming out of high school. You take him, you put him in, your organization. You put him in Arizona Arizona leagues, Arizona fall leagues, and they play basically other high school kids that are in the farm systems, whether that's international signings or anything like that. They play them, and then they just kind of get development for a year, and then once the season rolls around, they jump into low A or whatever it is, whether that's going to Modesto or whatever, wherever the organization wants to put those guys. But they skip out if the teams pay them enough. They skip out on those college years, which can be big, but also it's about the money at that point. Like if you're paying a guy $3 million to come play for you right away, it's kind of worth it.
Yeah, agreed. Well, that'd be a bummer. And, we like rooting for Oregon State baseball here as a couple of former Beavs, but we like our Washington guys playing for Washington teams even more.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll see, but that would certainly be exciting. And that was it. That's all I had to get off on the Mariners. It had to happen because
that was good. That's big news, man. I love a draft fleece. That's always great.
Yeah, that's exciting. Kind of the opposite of what happened with the Storm trading away their two first-round picks this year. So exciting. We get to talk a little bit of prospects. That's going to be the first thing that comes around for a little bit for the Mariners. I think we should start talking trades probably next week. I think the winter meetings will still be underway. They're underway as we speak. So things are going to happen, and we will let you guys know and be reacting to those each week. But for now, John, anything else to say before we hop off?
Get me out of here.
All right. Well, for John Carey, I'm Tyler Cartwright. This has been the Sound Up Seattle podcast. If you enjoyed this episode of Sound Up Seattle, please feel free to give us a follow on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening. You can find Sound Up Seattle on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and John is just tilting the camera right at his chest. For some reason, he's revving. He didn't want to stand up. He just had to move the entire laptop.
That's correct.
You can find Sound Up Seattle on YouTube as well. We just passed 300 views on a video, John. I didn't even tell you that. We just got 300 views on our Seahawks video from last week. Ooh. Huge. We love it. We love the support, and we appreciate it a lot.
Costco, you know where to find us.
So we post, segments of these podcasts instead of the entire thing. If you ever want to listen to just Mariners discussion or just Seahawks, we've got all that stuff out there. Next up, you can find me at TyCard50 everywhere that's important. You can email us your questions, comments, or concerns at soundupseattle@gmail.com. You can find John
sinking with my fantasy team into the briny deep like I do every single year, going down with my ship like a true captain.
I'm 3-10 in our league. I don't know if I can do this for another year. That's 2 straight years of being bad.
He drafted his team under his girlfriend's ESPN account, and several times this year I've had buddies be like, man, I do not know who that Camille character is, but she sucks. And I'm like, that's Tyler.
Yeah, my team got decimated by injuries. I don't know, I had to reshuffle the team around. My running backs this week were Jalen Warren and Tyler Algiers. Those were my running backs this week.
Preseason, honestly, it's like, you can talk yourself into both of those guys, but no, that did not pan out.
Yeah, so that was a tough one for me. And AJ Brown and Cooper Kupp just were never that good this year. So
Preach.
It is what it is. I think that's it. With all that being said, let's go Hawks, baby. We're in that time.
Go Zags. Huge game. Let's go. Yes, yep, I'm all set.
Sweet, you should just make that face the entire pod.
Fuck you. I do as I please.
All right. You want to mute your phone? Jesus Christ.
I just did.